Good morning, everyone. This is John with Gun Deals, and today we're going to be taking a look at a very interesting optic from Swampfox. This is the Swampfox Saber 5x Prism. But before we get into the video, if you don't know, Gun.Deals is a website that provides you with links to some of the best products and prices in the industry. Whatever it is that you happen to be looking for, go ahead and check them out. Once again, that is Gun.Deals. Importantly, they don't buy or sell anything. They don't take your money. They only point you in the right direction. Now, with that out of the way, go ahead and like, share, and subscribe, as that is free and does help us out quite a bit. On top of that, go ahead and comment your favorite Prism optic in the comments down below. Now, getting into full disclosure on the Swampfox Saber, I paid my own money for this optic. I paid full retail price for it. I believe it was just under $400. It was like $390, I think, is the MSRP for just the optic itself, not in conjunction with one of their red dots as well. This is just a 407K that I threw on the side of the optic. But I do have a somewhat relationship with Swampfox Optics. They've done a giveaway with me in the past, but that's really about as far as that goes. I pay my own money for all of their optics. They've never sent me anything to review, so just know that going forward. Now, getting into specifics on the Swampfox Saber, this is of course a 5x fixed magnification prism optic. Now, as you can probably also tell, it is a fairly large, chunky style of optic, coming in at a whopping 24.7 ounces for the prism by itself. Now, that is a lot, not necessarily a lot heavier, but it is heavier than a lot of LPVO end mount combinations. You know, around that 25 ounce mark, you can definitely get lighter LPVO and mount combos than this. However, this does have some benefits to other optics, which we'll get into. There are some things about this optic that it does amazingly well, basically the best in the industry, but it is a very chunky, girthy, heavy optic. Again, just under 25 ounces, not including if you throw on about an extra ounce of a micro red dot. So, getting into that, the construction is 6061 T6 aluminum. This is again fixed 5x prism magnification. In terms of controls, we have 2 rubber buttons on top for controlling our illumination. We have 10 illumination settings. Fortunately, on this optic, it gets very bright. Daylight visible, not necessarily like red dot bright, but it does definitely get very bright, comparable to other optics like primary arms optics also get very bright, and this one here is no different. Currently I have the green version, although they also make it in a red version as well. Now, you also have recessed into the optic body itself, you have your windage and elevation. Very easy to adjust with like the edge of a casing or something like that. I believe they are half MOA increments, which for me personally is more than precise enough. Now, the battery, as you might notice, it has an external AA battery. I believe this is a AA battery tray. The battery life is rated at 3,000 hours, which is not particularly high, but it is also comboed with their shake and wake technology, I think is what they call it. So that means that after a certain amount of time, it will automatically turn off. And if you pick it up, move it around, it will automatically turn back on. So instead of like 3,000 hours, you probably have, depending on how much you use it, of course, you probably have about a year of battery life, which for a prism optic, a magnified optic that's not a red dot, is pretty darn good. Now, of course, last thing to talk about on the optic body itself is on the back here, we do, of course, have a diopter for adjusting the reticle to your eyes to make sure that that reticle is as sharp, as focused as it can be, again, for your eyes. Everybody's eyes are a little bit different. Now, getting into the mount itself, the mount is actually a 2-piece mount, so it's not an integrated mount like it is on some of their other prism optics. So in theory, you could get a riser plate if you wanted to, or if they offered one. Of course, I don't believe they do at this point, but in theory, if you wanted it taller in the future, that is something that they could do. Now, with this optic, I believe the centerline height is 153, which is a lower 1/3 co-witness, so it's already at a very comfy height for your standard ARs or what have you. Now, the actual mount design itself is very good. You have 2 substantially sized cross bolts using Torx heads that give you a lot of clamping surface on your upper receiver. On top of that, I believe I had these set to 55 inch-pounds. You could probably go a little bit higher than that, but that's what I had them set to during the review. On top of that, they also have 2 integrated recoil lugs that provide additional contact surface to your upper receiver, allowing it to retain zero better, hold zero better, even during harsh impacts, which we'll get into in just a little bit.
Alright, Swampfox Saber, drop test number 1. Shoulder height, just dirt and rocks, maybe a little above shoulder height. Badonk, right on top, perfect hit. Alright, well there's 10 rounds, basically right on top of each other. You can see we kind of had the same main group, and then like flyers up here. I had one flyer over here, it could have just been me, but overall I'm pretty happy with that.
Getting into the reason why someone would actually buy one of these optics and some of the things that this optic does exceptionally well. This optic has the best field of view of any 5x optic on the market. No exceptions, it's the best that's out there. The field of view, they don't exactly rate it. However, I know that the field of view on this 5x model from Vortex, which also has a very good field of view for such a small, lightweight 5x optic. That one there, I believe, has about 20 feet, and you see approximately double out of the 5x Saber, meaning that you get a absolutely massive field of view. You can see nearly as much, if not more, than some other 3x Prism optics on the market, meaning that when you're behind this optic, the field of view is again monstrous and you can see a lot. Now, the way that they're getting that is with a huge body, 36mm objective lens, 36mm rear ocular section as well. It is like going from a 20-inch monitor on one of these guys, which is fine, totally usable, and then switching up to a 32-inch ultra-wide monitor on the Swampfox Saber. It is a night and day difference in terms of field of view. Now again, this is a fixed magnification optic, so field of view is very important because it's not like an LPVO where you can just dial back the magnification, go all the way down to 1x if you want to, because you are stuck at 5x. With this optic, with the Saber, you see more than any other 5x optic on the market, bar none. Now, usually if you have an insane field of view, you're going to really shorten up your eye relief and eye box. Fortunately, on this optic, it's actually surprisingly forgiving, again, given its field of view. So your eye relief is definitely short, but to get a good, perfect sight picture, you need to be about 2.5, 3 inches away. You can back up a little bit, you can come in just a little bit, but in the proper position, the eye box, left, right, up, and down, is actually not bad. So you actually get, one, an insane field of view, and then a decent eye relief and eye box given the insane field of view for its magnification level. On top of that, the glass quality, clarity, light transmission. Now this is of course a big optic with a lot of glass, so there is a lot of light collection on the front end. So even if the overall light transmission isn't as great as like higher end optics with higher quality glass, you still get a lot of light coming through the optic, meaning that the glass quality, the perception of glass quality in this optic is very high. It is very bright, it is very crisp, it has a lot more detail than a lot of other optics in the same price category. In fact, the glass is borderline excellent. It's almost without flaw, and again, has that insane field of view as well. Now, those two things are going to be the biggest draws for me personally. One, you get excellent glass quality, especially for the money and the price category that this is in. On top of that, you are getting the best field of view in a 5x optic. Those two things right there will be enough to sell some people on the optic. However, this is, of course, not a perfect optic. So the last thing that we need to talk about is the reticle. Now, I've used this optic quite a bit. I've used it on this 14.7 upper receiver out to about 500 yards. I've also used it on a 12.5 308 out to 600 yards. And I found the reticle to be a little bit lacking. So the reticle inside the optic is kind of your horseshoe outer circle kind of thing with a very nice cross T-post in the center for your more precise aiming. Now, the center section of the reticle is set up very well. It is both very fine and very precise, with that center cross being very refined, meaning that you can get a very refined zero or point of aim. But on top of that, it's also very fast. You have very aggressive lines drawing your eye to the center, as well as a very nice bright circle. Again, with the 10 settings on the green illumination, you get a very bright circle around a very fine, refined point of aim, so it's both fast and precise. Now, the rest of the reticle is unfortunately a little bit too simple. It is just a MOA ladder reticle which is perfectly fine for compensating for drop. However, again, when you're taking this out to extended distances, this is a 5x optic and certainly usable out to 5, 6, and 700 yards. It leaves a little bit to be desired in terms of its wind holding abilities. With 5.56 or even 308 with a short barrel at extended distances, you're usually getting a decent amount of wind. Meaning that with this optic, because you have no wind holds whatsoever, you only have an MOA ladder reticle, most of the time you're holding off in no man's land, which is not necessarily the most consistent or repeatable in terms of accuracy at long distance in windy circumstances. So with this optic at 400 yards, it was actually kind of funny. I was actually using the 6, so the number 6 in the reticle as my wind hold, because you don't actually have wind hold. So at 400 yards, I was putting the 6 on the target, and then at 500 yards, I was putting the 6 on top of the target and kind of just holding around it. And I really wish they would have just included some sort of wind holds, whether that was like a 3x3 MOA or a 5x5 MOA wind grid on there, just so you have some reference points so you're not having to just hold off in space and hope that you're holding in the correct point. Again, if you have a more definite point of aim to hold off for wind, that would make me quite a bit happier. Now, inside of, say, 300 yards with 5.56, the reticle really doesn't need to be doing anything else. It is, again, a very good mixture of speed and precision, and if you need to do just a little bit of holdover at 300 yards, very easy to do within the reticle. Really, the problems start when you go beyond that, say, 4, 5, 6, 700 yards, and now you're dealing with probably a little bit more wind, and you really don't have anything to reference off of. Now, if you, wherever you live, wind does not exist, then it's really not a problem for you. However, where I live in Western Washington, usually if you're getting out to 5, 6, 700 yards, you're usually dealing with a little bit of wind, which makes this optic, unfortunately, less usable just because of the reticle. Not that the magnification level is hurting you, because again, with 5x, I don't have any problem going out to 4, 5, 600 yards. I don't think that's the problem at all. Usually the problem is the fact that you just don't have any reference point. So if you're dealing with like a full value 5, 10, or 15 mile an hour wind, you're literally holding off in no man's land and just kind of hoping that you're holding in the right spot. Now, unfortunately, that means that the Swampfox Saber has been a little bit of a mixed bag for me. The optic itself between, say, 50 and 300 yards is nearly perfect, giving you that 5x fixed magnification, very usable in that distance. Even inside of 50 yards, the offset red dot, the built-in offset red dot mounting is actually really good. So you actually only have that's the entire movement right there between your offset and, of course, your 5x Saber. So even inside of 50 yards, it's very easy. It's a very natural transition from the red dot to the optic itself, and it is, again, very, very quick. Now, beyond 300 yards, though, which, again, it is a 5x Prism, so you'd think it should be able to stretch out to at least 600 yards or so. Beyond that 300-yard mark, especially when you start to contend with winds or with different calibers like 7.62x39 or 300 black or something like that, where the wind is going to be even worse than 5.56 or 308, that's where the optic really starts to lag behind. Now, on top of that, it's a very big, very heavy optic, coming in at, again, just under 25 ounces without a red dot on the side. With the red dot on the side, it's going to be 25.5, 26 ounces or so, which is, again, a very heavy optic setup. So, it's very big, it's very heavy. The field of view is excellent. The glass quality is excellent. 50 to 300 is perfect for the optic, really. But is it worth the size and weight? And then the trade-offs when you start to get to longer range. And again, there are so many good LPVOs out there in the same price category that are going to provide you a more versatile reticle at extended distances. No, it will not have anywhere near the field of view of this optic, although, again, this is a fixed 5x versus like a 1:8 where you can dial all the way back to 1. So it is a interesting optic. I really like that Swampfox brought it to market. I don't think personally that the weight is too big of a downside. It's going to be comparable in the same ballpark of a lot of LPVO end mount combinations. So even with its size and weight, I still think that it can perform very well against other LPVOs, especially when you consider that it has a much better field of view and the glass quality is also a step above. However, again, if it just had a little bit more complex of a reticle, like say 4 and 8 MOA wind holds all the way down the reticle, kind of like a very skinny Christmas tree, if you will, I think it would be much more usable at extended distances. As it stands, though, it is just a little bit hampered at those distances. And again, the magnification, a 5x prism, is certainly usable out to 600 yards or even further if you really wanted to. But the fact that you kind of have to hold in no man's land for wind is a big downer. So at the end of the day, guys, there are things that I love about the Swampfox Saber. Love the field of view, excellent glass quality inside of 300 yards. It's nearly perfect. Even the built-in offset works very well. It's very fast, very intuitive to get used to. Again, if it was a little bit more refined in terms of the reticle, I think it would be a great option if you could take the size and weight. As it stands right now, though, because it's a little bit harder to use at, again, those extended distances, it's not something that I can recommend for most people. So this is going to be, again, a very niche optic, and I think if Swampfox does end up watching this video, hopefully they will come out with just a updated reticle. They don't need to change anything else on the optic, and it would make it much more usable at extended distances. And of course, it would still be big and heavy, which would cut out about half of the consumer base out there. But again, for people who are fine with the weight, now they have at least a much more usable reticle at distance, meaning that the optic is overall more usable. So with all of that out of the way, guys, let me know what you think of the Swampfox Saber in the comments down below. If there's any sort of other Prism optics that I should be testing it out against, of course. And with all that out of the way, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Peace off.